I was a kid, I played a ton of wiffle ball in my backyard with my buddies, and all the grass was killed where home plate was and the pitcher found, because we pretty much lived out there. And occasionally my dad would join us, you know, horsing around. Sometimes we'd play pickle too. And I said, "Dad, you got to take a softball. We have a fence. You got to throw that ball against the fence and show these guys what you can do," because they didn't know we had a superhero out there, and they only knew the disguise, but they didn't know what a fantastic athlete he was. But growing up, all the wonderful memories of playing, of being right there watching you play softball, it was really a treat. First of all, the fact that you were able to meet Chuck Maxwell in 1977, I don't understand how you got that good fortune, because it was just a matter of time before you met Chuck and you guys made your partnership. But the fact that you were able to do it in 77 and 78 was really special, because I remember you telling me what the caliber ball was, what it was in the mid-80s. You said, "Skip, it was better in 77, 78. And you have those two wonderful plaques growing up where you were MVP of those two teams. That was just phenomenal to me. So I was always impressed with that. But you met Chuck, and Tuesdays and Thursday nights we had wonderful memories of highly competitive athletic softball where defense played a role, and hitting, pitching, it was the whole deal. And you were right there doing all that. And then on the weekends, the extraordinary, emotionally exhausting tournaments. The one that comes to mind is in '86, we went to the regional tournament in St. Louis, and it was an 8-hour car ride. It was double elimination, so we knew after we lost that first game, I think it was 100 run to none. That game was in the mud because it rained. We might be going home on another 8-hour car ride that day, but we won the next game, and we won the next game. I was the bad boy. I got paid 50 cents a game, but I was emotionally invested, and we ended up beating the two other teams that came from Omaha, and we kept on playing into Sunday, and I don't know if we won 6 or 7 games until we got close to those trophies. I remember Pat Vendetti sitting next to the trophies during a break, and I don't know if he said, I want one of those. But I think it was his son Tony said, "We're getting close." But we didn't get it, but it was a great tournament. And that one just sticks in my mind as one of the fantastic tournaments that it was just a treat for me to be a part of. And then when you turned 50 and I turned 20, I had the opportunity to play with you in a modest league, Dad, in Council Bluffs. But you were pitcher and I was catcher. I finally had the courage to catch fast pitch softball. Because as a kid, Pat was there warming you up on the lines with the chalk, and you said, "Skip, step up there," and I always regretted that I was a little too cowardly to step up and take the hot stuff just in the batter's box. But I did play 4 years with you. That first year, it was just a total blast because, you know, we were good. And you hit 6th and I hit 7th, or I hit 6th and you hit 7th. So we were each other's RBIs. And I got a chance to catch for you, and I called your pitches, and you respected my calls, even though a lot of times we took somebody 0-2 and then he hit you for a triple. I wondered if Chuck ever got the idea that might be the catcher and not the pitcher who was making the problems there. But as the years wore on, a couple of things happened. You tore your bicep and your arm by throwing a frisbee. You had you were just getting older in general. You had a disc removed in your back, and during spring training, a Omaha Hall of Famer ended up breaking your arm during batting practice. So there were some discouraging things, and you ended up missing a few games. But we still, by 2000, had a bit of a leadership void on our team that I remember you stepped up to fill. You were the most aggressive defensive player on the team. I don't know if you remember this in 2000. It's probably a footnote in your history, but it was a big part of mine. And you pitched great, and Chuck moved you up to the 4th spot for hitting because he knew we needed somebody to score some runs. And you did what you could, and I was always impressed with the way you could step up even after all those things that happened to you by the time you're 53 at this point. But those are the things that come to mind when I think about your wonderful career and my extraordinary privilege to be there with you. So with that, I'd like you to present you into the Hall of Fame.
I've got some notes here because I don't just want to ramble, but I may end up rambling anyway. Thank you, Skip. That was definitely touched. I want to take you back a little bit. I know we all have a story, but I want to share a little bit of mine. I was raised in Everett, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. My father was a commercial fisherman, and he taught us how to play ball. He taught us how to ride bikes. When I was about 10 years old, there was nothing that I thought my father couldn't do. Did I mention he was blind? He would take me down to the park with my sister, and he would send me out into the outfield. And he would say, "Skip." And I'd say, "Dad, I'm over here." And he would point to make sure. And I'd say, "Yeah." And then he would take a few tracks, and he'd hit one out eventually, and I'd throw it back in, and my sister would give it to him, and we'd do it again and again. "Skip." "Dad, I'm over here." And it was just amazing. He took such joy in us kids playing ball and what we did. It was phenomenal. He had a great sense of humor too. When I was playing Pony League, they would tell him when I'd be up at bat. And he could tell by the crowd if an umpire, sorry umpires, would miss a call. And he would stand up and he'd hold up his cane, white fluorescent with red on it, and say, "Hey ump, you need this more than I do." He was just an amazing man. There was nothing that he wouldn't try or wouldn't do for us kids. My mother was an Irish lady. My father obviously was Italian. But she was an Irish lady, and she had a sense of humor too. And us kids, there was 5 of us, we could always tell when they argued. Because my dad would always be dressed funny. He would set up his clothes for him. So he caught on to that. He would say, before he'd leave the house or going down to the bar or whatever, he'd say, "Skip, how do I look?" And I wouldn't say anything, and he'd say, "That woman." My father took such joy in my playing ball that I think even today I'm still trying to please him. But I joined the Air Force in 1966. I'll never win the megabucks because I've never played the lottery. But I'll tell you what, in 1967 I hit the jackpot. I met a lovely lady named Pam Bosnitz, who ended up being my wife for 43 years. Caring, unselfish, loving personality that changed my life. And we have 3 kids, and she even delayed her becoming a Lutheran pastor for about 10 years so that I could finish my Air Force career and get the kids out of school before and now she's celebrating her 10th year as a Lutheran pastor. So she's an unselfish, wonderful woman. She's had an amazing influence on our kids, 3 talented, very musical, wonderful kids, Lori, Jenny, and Skip. We moved 9 times in 20 years in the Air Force. There was one year the kids had 3 different school systems. And they never complained once, at least about the moving anyway. But in 1977, as Skip said, I came to Omaha and somehow I met Chuck Maxwell. And I played for the West Side Chapel. It was known as the Chapel then. And there was a mystique about the chapel. We always seemed to come out of a game with a win somehow. And Chuck was a great organizer, and he's the kind of guy that makes people feel good about themselves. In the 90s, Chuck started a farm club in Iowa, as Skip alluded to. And Chuck, I want to thank you for that, because I was one of the highlights of my career was to play with my son. And that was just amazing for those years, Chuck. 2 great men that played for Westside are no longer with us, Larry Maxwell and John Bartek, and they're sorely missed. Over the years, they've had many great athletes. Larry Miller, Frank Slezak, Big George, Beneke, Dave Larson, Tim Maxwell. I'll tell you, those nights when Frank Slezak and Tim would hit a ball in the night sky. It would be like a dissolving aspirin disappearing. At one time, I think